Hi guys, the DUP MP Sammy Wilson shouted betrayal in the direction of a few Tories who were present for the humble address following the restoration of the Northern Ireland Executive. Sammy was livid with the Conservative and Unionist Party who handed over Northern Ireland to the European Union. This, it seems, is a lame attempt by the East Antrim MP to pretend to his constituents that he's still fighting against the Northern Ireland Protocol and the Windsor Framework, when that battle is long lost. A bit of pointless theatre, but this is what we love about Sammy Wilson.
It's also significant that this humble address is essential because, and was only being brought forward, because of the way in which successive Prime Ministers from the Conservative and Unionist Party have betrayed Northern Ireland, choosing rather to side with the EU and not annoy the European Union, even if it meant weakening the union of the United Kingdom. And that's the sad reality. These assuring words, or as the member for Foyle described, the love letter to unionists. So I think when we look at it, we'll see it's not such a love letter anyway. But the love letter to unionists is essential because of the trust which has been broken by a government that was quite happy to hand Northern Ireland over to the European Union as a vassal state, to use the terms of the former Prime Minister, who actually was responsible for some of the damage which was done. There are a number of issues that are addressed here. The first one is to affirm the importance of upholding the Belfast Good Friday Agreement with all its strands. Why is it necessary to do that? The reason why, of course, it's necessary to do that is because this government, at the behest of the European Union, because it wanted and it required that the position of Northern Ireland within the United Kingdom be weakened, and that any attempt to redress that would be thwarted by changing the voting arrangements in the Assembly. That's the reason why we have to have this affirming the importance of the Belfast Agreement. Now, we already know that, of course, it wasn't all that important to this government, because the whole principle of consent in changing the position of Northern Ireland within the United Kingdom was simply ignored. And the damage is done.
Once again, we have Ian Paisley, who doesn't understand the principle of consent in the Good Friday Agreement or the Belfast Agreement, and this idea that the Tories decided to weaken Northern Ireland's position in the United Kingdom. Sammy Wilson campaigned for Northern Ireland's position to be weakened in the Brexit campaign. So he campaigned for Northern Ireland's position to be weakened in the European Union. We told people like Sammy Wilson, and Sammy Wilson himself was told back in 2016, look, leaving the European Union puts Northern Ireland at risk. We don't know what the end result will be. Some people accurately predicted what would happen, where the border would go. But for most people, it wasn't very clear. And Sammy Wilson and Brexiteers in Northern Ireland basically responded by saying, we don't care. We don't believe that the UK government will undermine Northern Ireland's position. Now, remember, people like Boris Johnson, Nigel Farage, Jacob Rees-Mogg and others were ignoring the issue of Northern Ireland. Whenever it was brought up, it was either ignored, or they talked about electronic borders or stuff like that, or nothing will change. Now, of course, something would have to change. So that should have been the fact that Boris Johnson, Mogg and Nigel Farage couldn't actually really answer this question should have raised alarm bells for unionists in Northern Ireland. Now, not all unionists went along with the DUP. The UUP, for example, they were against Brexit. They realised this is going to be damaging to the union. They were not dragged along with this anti-EU, anti-Ireland rhetoric. But the DUP can't claim some sort of victimhood now. They backed Boris Johnson back in 2019. They eventually realised that they were being thrown under a bus. And instead of actually admitting it and saying, actually, we were lied to, we got the wrong type of Brexit, they of course took the ball and went home with it, being, well, we're actually not going to allow the Northern Ireland Executive to be up and running because of our problems with the Northern Ireland Protocol, which of course is part of the withdrawal agreement, Boris Johnson's oven-ready deal. These people were told in 2016 Brexit would be a problem. They ignored those warnings. Now they're complaining about the consequences of Brexit, that being the Windsor Framework, and the fact that some part of the UK, that being Northern Ireland, had to remain part of the single market in order to avoid a hard border on the island of Ireland. Now, of course, people like Sammy Wilson were hoping and betting that a hard border would be put on the island of Ireland. But then he obviously hadn't read the Good Friday Agreement, or didn't understand it, or believed that the Brexiteers would ignore the Good Friday Agreement and put a border on the hard border on the island of Ireland anyway. So I'll come back to the main point here. This is all a bit of theatre. This is Sammy Wilson trying to convince people before a general election in his constituency that he's still fighting the good fight against the Northern Ireland Protocol, which is not going away. The Windsor Framework, which has support of both the Conservatives and the Labour Party overwhelmingly. Labour have said that they're going to implement the Windsor Framework. So this is Sammy Wilson ranting and raving, trying to convince people in his constituency, don't worry, I'm still fighting. Perhaps they'll be stupid enough to vote for him. Perhaps they'll be stupid enough to think that something can be undone, when reality cannot be undone. Let me know in the comment section, guys, what you think. As always, your comments are greatly appreciated. Thanks a lot.